Welcome to Hand Forged, the podcast where blue-collar grit meets modern insight. We celebrate the stories of tradespeople and bridge traditional craftsmanship with today's evolving business world. Each episode brings you real stories, practical advice, and insights from skilled professionals and entrepreneurs to help you elevate your work, overcome challenges, and grow. So grab your tools and get ready to be inspired. This is Hand Forged.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hand Forged. We are here with Mr. Chris Crump, the one and only, with CWC Design out of Newburyport. I've been working with Chris for a couple of years. We met through BNI. Chris refers some work over to us. We kind of refer some contractors over to him. Been a pretty good relationship so far.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Thanks, man. And Chris's family is going to be watching, so I can't swear or do anything like that. I'm going to be on my best behavior today.
They know me. Just don't worry about it.
Yeah, I wasn't. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you and a little bit about CWC?
Sure. So I have a small residential and commercial design firm in Newburyport. Let's see, I started my firm in 2010 and slowly grew out of my basement into multiple different offices, like many people, many guys out there or women out there who start their own business. Yeah. A lot of them do start out their own basement, but
I started in a basement too.
Yep, exactly. So, and then slowly grew location to location until finally I found a nice home in downtown Newburyport, which is pretty much where I wanted to be. Eventually, that was one of my goals.
Yeah.
So we have a really nice location, and I have a great staff around me. Really nice employees, and a good team, and we do fairly well.
Nice, man. So what is the job that you do the most? I guess, what are you doing the most? Residential, commercial?
Right. So I would say probably right now we do about 75 to 80% residential.
Gotcha.
New homes, additions, remodels, and then 25% commercial, which contains anywhere from multi-unit housing developments, 2, 3, 4 family homes. We seem to have a good foothold on new construction on Salisbury Beach and some on Plum Island. We have a lot of projects and a lot of experience doing that, and we keep getting that notoriety and business coming from that way. And then we also have other commercial projects like we're potentially looking at a new pickleball center that we might be designing because that's nice. The new sports theme that's going around, and it's huge.
Yeah, there's a new one that just opened up right around the corner from my house in Hampstead, and they had a bunch of space. It was like what the hell was back there? I forget what was back there. It was like a warehouse. There was like some shops or something in it, I think. And they tore it all down. They put this huge metal building up, and it's like 603 pickleball or something like that.
No, I've been there a couple times.
Have you?
Yeah. No, I play a lot of sports and activities, and I'm actually a certified pickleball coach.
Shut up.
Yeah.
So I haven't played pickleball yet, man. I want to try it.
Yeah. No, it's very addictive. It's a great game. Someone that goes to my health club that I'm at approached me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about designing a new center." So we're excited about that.
That's cool.
Potentially right now we have a Mexican restaurant that we're looking to do over in Tingsboro.
Nice.
So there are a bunch of different commercial projects that come along that we like to look into, and sometimes when those things come across, we collaborate with other architects to work on the projects and other design, other engineers and so forth. And,
right. So you work hand in hand with the architects?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, and especially mostly with commercial work.
Yeah.
So, but it's a good experience. I love collaborating.
Yeah.
Whether it's with them or anyone else for that matter. I like being a team player. Whether it's my team or other people that I work with, like yourself, or contractors or engineers or so forth. And, it's never an ego thing. It's never my way only. I collaborate with them, and a lot of times I'll go out to a site and the contractor will be there and I'll say, okay, what do you think might be a good suggestion for this?
Yeah.
And they come back and they say, oh, I think this. And I said, well, I think about this. So, who, sometimes we go his way or their way, and sometimes they go my way. But we work as a team and know that the most important thing is to make sure that the client's happy. So
yeah, it makes sense.
and that's why I like to work. I like to work as a team player for everybody.
At Seacoast Cabinet, Raleigh, Mass., we offer a full range of services from design to installation, tailored to residential and commercial applications. We carry 3 lines of American-made cabinetry to fit any budget, ensuring that you get the best quality and value. For more information or a free quote and design, head to seacoastcabinetne.com.
Yeah, I know that the contractors that I know that have worked with you have loved having you around. I know Sam Chase just referred you over to that Martin job we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I had lunch or dinner with him on Friday. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was Friday. Went over to the Goat in Newburyport. I haven't been there yet, so check that out. But but yeah, we're shooting the shit a little bit, and he was talking. He's like, so glad that we made that introduction. He's like, because I have a guy, I have this architect guy that I work with. Mm-hmm. He's old and grumpy and stuff, but he's like, Chris is just, a little bit different. It's easier to work with him, and I can just be like, hey, Chris, this is what's going on. Can you just do this? And he's like, it's nice to know that it's just getting done.
Yeah, and that's the kind of attitude that I have. It's just I just want to be a friendly atmosphere, teamwork, and work with you. And I enjoy working with contractors. Just to kind of go back on a little side note. It's funny how this came about because I used to work in a high-end residential firm in downtown Boston for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And we did high-end houses in Wellesley, Weston, Dover, and those areas out there. And then 50% of the work was in Martha's Vineyard. Mm-hmm. And we used to do anywhere from $1 million to $20 million homes, almost all residential. And that's, I learned a lot from that process. But one of the things that I was key on was establishing relationships, especially with contractors, city board members, and stuff like that. And my boss at that time didn't really like that. He wanted me in the office as much as possible for billable hours, because I would stay at a site and leave there and stay there for another half an hour just talking to the contractor and developing a relationship.
So important.
You can learn to like and trust the person, So in 2009, I was laid off due to the recession. And at that time, about 33% of all designers and architects in Massachusetts were laid off.
Right.
So if there was a job opening, which there wasn't, there'd be about 300 applications on the desk. And there's no way I'd be able to compete with that. So my options were either start my own design firm or find a different profession. And I love what I do. I truly do. It just gives me a sense of accomplishment, a sense of satisfaction, and a sense of pride. And so I decided to start on my own. So I went over to the contractors that I had associated with my old job, and I said, listen, I don't want to step on my boss's toes. I don't want to get in the way, but if you guys have some little jobs that aren't as big as his and that he'd be interested in, you could throw my way. I'd appreciate it. And so I can get started. And I'd say probably about 7 or 8 out of 10 of them came to me and says, Chris, I'll give you all my jobs. I can't stand your boss's ego, and I only do it for the money. And he said, I'll give you, I can't give you the huge jobs, but I'll give you as many jobs as I can, and because I'd love to work with you, because I enjoy working with you.
Well, and that comes from all the extra time that you spent building those relationships.
And that's what my point is. You have to establish these relationships to be able to forge a good relationship. Yeah. And it just, so anyhow, through all those connections, I was flooded with jobs during a recession. And that's what got me through the recession. And I had a lot of colleagues. I went to the Boston Architectural College for a master's degree, and I have a lot of colleagues in there who tried to do that. And they failed, unfortunately. And it was sad to see. But they didn't have the relationships that I was fortunate to have. And I'm not saying they didn't try and they didn't do a good job. It's just I was fortunate enough to be able to do that.
Yeah, but those relationships to me are so much more important than an education.
Right.
You know what I mean? And again, in your world, the degree is important. And I'm not taking anything away from anyone that goes to school. I get it and I understand. But I would take somebody with the experience and the relationships over the degree at any day of the week. You
Understood.
know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's true. And most, I find with most of the clients that I meet, that's what they want. They want the relationship. They want to feel like you actually care and you're not just a number.
Yeah.
And that you're going to do everything you can to satisfy them or to make them happy with something.
Right.
So that's how I started my business. And like I said, I moved from basement to so and so forth and different locations until I got to the point where I am now. And then when I started my business, there's no manual that shows you how to do your business.
Truth.
And you have to figure it out by fire.
Yep.
And so someone said to me, okay, now you got to go out and network and find more business and relationships. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What's networking? So, and they looked at me like, are you serious? And I was like, no, I'm dead serious. I don't know what the heck you're talking about, So then someone introduced me to BNI, Business Networking International. And back then I was working down in Wellesley and I was sick and tired of traveling the 128 belt from the North Shore every day to go down there to those jobs.
Where do you live?
Haverhill.
Haverhill.
Yeah. So I love the clients, and I always do. Majority of the time, I love the clients. But I was tired of the commute.
Yeah.
And I had to go down there a lot for site visits and measures and meetings and stuff like that. And so I wanted to transfer my business up to the North Shore. So I called. He brought me to a BNI meeting. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I like it. I'm starting to understand this networking thing and how important it is.
Right.
So I called up one of the chapters in Newburyport and I said, hey, do you mind if I visit? And from there, I joined. I went in there, went for one meeting, and I joined. I got in, and I've been there now for about 14 years. And it's funny because it also, and I'm not trying to get too far into it, but it also allowed me to develop other skills that I didn't realize I needed. For example, public speaking. When I first started with BNI, I would get up there, my voice would crack. I'd have to read from a card. I'd be shaking and sweating and nervous as heck, in front of 30, 40, 50 people.
That are all professional and successful at what they do.
So it's a little intimidating at the beginning,
Yeah.
But then afterwards, after a number of years, now I can speak in front of 100 people off the cuff, no speech needed, and feel comfortable.
Right.
So it takes a while. And now, surprisingly, my networking skills are one of the best skills I have now. They're one of my, the more better skills. So, and I'm very confident with that. And I'm confident with, talking in public or talking to clients and stuff like that. So it definitely raised that. So,
I feel like it's one of those tools that like anything else, right? Like if you don't sharpen it on a regular basis, then it gets dull. So like networking, the more that you do it, and the more you put yourself in those uncomfortable situations where you don't know anybody or you have to speak or stuff like that, I feel like the better that you get at it, the more confident, the more comfortable you get at doing it. Yeah. Like I do a lot with like the North Shore magazine and like going to those events. For me, a lot of very successful people there in our industries, and like to just go over to a group of people and be like, hey, what's up? I'm Frank,
Right.
It's hard, man. Like it's not an easy thing for a lot of people to do. And I feel like BNI has made me better at that,
100%. So, I'm very grateful that and the relationships that I've established through that chapter and through the connections through there to other people and to contractors and engineers and stuff like that. And now, in the short time that I've been in Newburyport, which is probably about 5 or 6 years, I have a very good presence now there. And, I can go out to lunch in town and walk down the street and bump into 5 or 6 people. When I moved to Newburyport, I didn't know one single person in there.
Right.
And so it's a beautiful town. It's very welcoming, and the people there are really nice. And that's also, I kind of feel like the people on the North Shore, the clients that I have, are a lot more laid back and reasonable than the ones I used to have a while back. So I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. And like I said, I have a great team with me in the office, very smart, and they're very on top of things, and they help support everything that we do. And, I like to think that we put out a good product for people. Yeah. And so I'm very happy where we are, and I'm looking forward to keep having it grow. Yeah,
for sure. Well, so before you were with that other company, what did you do before that?
My father was a contractor.
Yeah.
Or developer/contractor. And so I grew up stepping on 2x6 floor, 2x10 floor joists, framing,
Yep.
when I was 13, 14 years old. And I learned all the details and how to cut, how to build. I can pretty much do anything construction-wise myself, except for, some of the trades. Like you need an electrician, or you need a plumber, or you need an HVAC guy for certain things.
Yeah.
It's just, you need their experience and their expertise.
Sure.
But, anything that you have to fix or do around the house, I can take care of, you know. But that's the one thing that I feel sometimes that I have a little bit more experience with than other designers or architects out there.
Yeah.
Because I've been in the field.
Yep.
And I know what might look pretty on paper but won't work in the field.
Right.
And very a lot less of a time do I see contractors come to me and say, "Hey, Chris, I know this looks like a really pretty detail, but it's not going to work." You know. Or I know the lingo and how contractors talk and how they frame and how they put things together out there. So when they call me, a lot of times I don't even need to go out to the site because they can just walk me through it on the phone and I can follow them step by step about what they're saying and how fast they usually say it, which is very quickly. So I think I have, that's one step that I have above some others who have just gone through the architectural process or becoming an architect that they just learn it through school.
Right.
School is great, obviously, but you can't learn the actual in-field design and build process from school.
That was my number one hang up with most designers and most architects, when I had a tool belt on, was what looks good on paper and what works on paper and what works in 2D doesn't always work in the field.
Right.
And you could always tell the guys that had no clue because you'd be like, hey, listen, this is what it looks like here, but this is the reason that we can't do it. And they'd be like, it works here on the paper. And it's like, clearly you haven't swung a hammer.
Exactly. And it's funny because, I can't tell you how many times I go out to a site and, I actually have contractors call me that are working on plans from another designer or another architect. And they say, Chris, can you go over and help me figure this out? Because they just don't get it. And so I've been out there and I've done that. And, so I get it. And some things you just have to learn through physical.
Hands-on.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's important.
It's been huge for me.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference.
Yeah. I mean, for us, same thing, I have cabinet design, I have kitchen designers, right? And most of them have never been in the field. So it's one of those things where design something on paper and in 3D, it looks nice, but this is the reason that it doesn't work. And I think that's why our dynamic works well in the showroom is because I had all the experience in the field. I've installed thousands of kitchens. So, where they, the designers far exceed me as far as design skill goes. I can design a kitchen, but you start putting in slope ceilings and round walls, somebody else is doing that.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah.
But, the application part of things and the install part of things, it's nice to be able to have them ask me questions about install and will this work and how does this work? And then me be able to ask them questions about design when I am designing, you know? And it's, I think having that is super important. And I feel like I don't know if the business or the company would have succeeded if we didn't have both.
Yeah, 100%. And I honestly feel like I wouldn't have the clientele and the jobs that I get because I do believe my reputation out there is that, I go the extra mile for a lot of my clients. I have the experience of, and the relationships I have with some of the contractors that I work with, they know that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to details and stuff like that. Another thing that happens often is, when a problem presents itself in the field, contractors are very good at finding solutions. But sometimes, not all the time, there are many times they do, but sometimes they don't, they can visualize the solution for the problem right in front of them, but they don't visualize what it's going to look like when it's finished.
Right.
Or, putting a dormer on a house. And, you can put a dormer on a house, but is it the right style? Is it the right size? Is it the right shape and roof and all that? And that complements the rest of the house.
Right.
So, that's the part where I come into play, but working with them as a team to try and figure out the solution for it.
Yeah.
And not talking down to them.
Yeah.
And not having an ego. That's one thing that I pride myself in is that I'm perfectly well capable of saying, yeah, you know what, I like your idea better, you know,
Yeah.
and finding a solution together rather than just saying, you know what, let's just build it the way I designed it.
Right.
You know, no matter what they say, you know, and it's funny because that was,
Nobody likes that.
no. So there was a famous architect, and he used to say that, you know, the contractor say, well, we can't do this, this, and this. And he said, and he listened, and he said, well, what would you decide? What would you think you would like to do? And he's like, blah, 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 and this, and this, and this. And he says, okay, that's very nice, but let's just build it the way I designed it. You know, and I'm like, okay. So, you know, it's just an ego thing.
Yeah.
And there are many out there that do have that, and there are many that don't. But
Yeah.
I like to think that I have a very good relationship with almost all the contractors I work with.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I get a good portion of my projects from contractors, or referrals from contractors. And so, and I treat them as equals.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, well, I think it's important, right? Because I think in general, contractors are good at being reactive. Like, there's a problem now, this is what I would do to fix it.
Right.
But not so much proactive in the way of looking at what that fix now does 10 steps down the road.
Correct.
Because you know, and I'm probably as guilty of it as most of them, is that like, I'm just good at problem solving, right? Like, oh, there's a problem, this is how I'm going to fix it.
Right.
And then if there's a problem 10 steps down the process, I'm going to fix that too.
Yeah.
You know, but what's nice about, you know, what you're saying is like, have that conversation. This is how I want to fix it. Having you be able to look 10 steps down the road and say, well, that fixes it now, but this is where the issue is going to be down the process.
Right.
You know, I think that's
Exactly.
important. And those are the types of relationships that you want. You know what I mean?
And to know that, for another thing that I like when my relationships with contractors too, and I base that basically because most of my relationships are with contractors, but you know, I never throw a contractor under the bus. If there's a problem on the project and I see it and it's not a big deal and I don't want I'll wait until the client's gone and then pull the contractor aside and say, hey, just saw this. We got to touch that up real quick, rather than making him look bad in front of the client, saying, hey, what the heck's wrong with that?
Right.
You know, right in front of the client. You know, so you know, it's just mutual respect.
Right. Not a lot of people have that either.
No. When sometimes they don't, you know,
Yeah.
or they don't realize they're doing what they're doing. You know?
Right.
But and then other times, for example, we'll have to put a beam right through the middle of a kitchen ceiling.
Right.
You know, and they say, okay, we'll just put the beam in there, we'll case it out, and it'll look fine. I'm like, one random beam in the middle of the kitchen? No, not so good. So why don't we put a couple fake ones in there to balance it out and make it symmetrical and make it look clean and finished?
Right.
You know? And that's where I get, you know, to the point where I'm saying you have to look 10 steps further.
Right.
You know, and make sure that it's going, when it's finished, how it's going to look. And
Yeah.
is it going to fit in with everything else in the room?
Well, sometimes it's not about just fixing the issue. It's about how it's going to look when it's done too.
Right.
You know, and again, contractors know how to fix problems. They're good at fixing problems.
Absolutely.
You know, but sometimes they don't care so much about the aesthetic of things.
Right. Or
you
they
know?
don't. Sometimes they're just so focused on the issue they don't see the further picture.
Right.
Which is fine. You
Right.
know, it's nothing bad.
Well, right.
It's
And
just,
everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. That's why
Exactly.
it's good to have that team kind of mentality.
Yep.
You know, we see it a lot with installers that we've never worked with. You know, we send the designs, and our install packets are very descriptive. Like, there's a lot of information there because I come from an install background. Like, I want to make it as easy for these guys as possible.
Right.
You know, and then you have the contractors. So you have, you know, two types of installers or two types of contractors where they run into an issue and straight to the homeowner or straight to the GC, yeah, this is a problem, you know, and like want to pass the blame instead of just calling us.
Yeah.
You know, just, all right, so this is the issue. Like, we obviously aren't perfect either. Like, so this is the issue. This is how we, you know, and working together with them to resolve the issue. My biggest thing is that, like, if you're going to have a problem, right, before I present that problem to end consumer, I want a resolution.
Yeah.
Because, like, why freak somebody out with a problem without an answer? You know, for no reason. You're just causing mayhem. You're causing anxiety and insecurities with these people without a resolution. So, like, come to me with the problem. Let's talk about it. Come up with a resolution, and then I'll present it to the customer. I have no problem with that. But, like, I just want to have a resolution.
Yep.
I just hate when the contractors are like, they screwed this up, and you know, it's like, man, just call me.
So and that comes back to the trust factor and the relationship factor. You know, I don't point fingers.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't sit there and say, well, you screwed this up. You know, and that might be the case, but I'm not going to point it out. I'm just like, you know what? This is a situation. what can we do to resolve it?
Yep.
And let's say something comes up that's an issue with the contract. The contractor has an issue that we need to figure out how to solve it. I won't approach the client until I have solutions.
Yeah.
Because like you said, you don't want to go to a client and say, yeah, we have a problem. We'll think of something.
Yeah.
Because they're going to start getting anxiety and freaking out.
Yep.
You want to be able to, okay, we have this issue, but I spoke with the contractor already, so I'm already on top of it.
Yeah.
And these are the options we figured out that will work best.
Right.
And when they hear that, they're like, okay, it was an issue, not a big deal, but we have it covered.
Right.
And I don't have to freak out.
Right.
Right. So, and I think that's also another sense of comfort that my clients have with me.
Right.
And then, another aspect too is I always treat every single project as if it's my own.
Yep.
I don't assume that my clients have bottomless pockets that they can just spend whatever and do whatever I want or design. I can, they can have a 400, I got a 600 square foot addition on the house, and I can design a $1 million addition for them.
Right.
But I'm trying to make sure that we try and be as close to their budget as possible, and be respectful of those things, and really listen to what they need and what they want, and do our best, and just like everybody out there, not every project goes perfect,
right.
And you're going to miss the mark once in a blue moon, but majority of the time we're pretty good.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of what we do and the team that I have.
Yeah. What do you see as like some of the biggest issues and obstacles that you have in business?
Well, as the business itself, if you're talking about, the clients and stuff like that, I think sometimes, a lot of times clients are not educated or not knowingly enough that they need an architect first.
Yeah.
When someone wants an addition on their home, their first instinct says, oh, I want an addition, and so let me go talk to a contractor.
Yep.
And every town you need plans in order to do an addition, remodel, or new home or anything like that. You can't get away without it unless you're way up in the woods.
Right.
So it's educating people out there. And then also many people have this, the architects or designers have this stereotype that they are a luxury item. And, it's only for the rich who can afford them. And that was one of the things so I used to work for clients that were multi-billionaires or multi-millionaires. And there's pluses and minuses to that as well. But I enjoyed that. But there were some things that I didn't enjoy about it. And so I wanted to be able to provide a service to design additions, remodels, and stuff like that for the average homeowner, and make it a reasonable fee, or not exorbitant fees like my old boss, who was about 5 to 10 times more than what I would charge. And if they can get it, by all means, you know. But I enjoy just working with the average homeowner and making them feel important, and making their dreams come true. Or envision or creating a space that they haven't been envisioning the whole time. And when I can do that at a reasonable price for them, an affordable price for them, then I feel satisfied and successful.
I feel like you're right. If people are thinking like, oh, I'm going to do this addition, or I'm going to do this big renovation, or whatever it is, first call is to the contractor, and most contractors can make that happen, but I know a lot of them that don't do any kind of design work. And it's like, how do you, what? Yeah. How do you tell this person you're going to do this addition, and they're just like, okay, just have at it. Like with nothing, with no pictures or like measurements or anything? Yeah.
So there are a lot of, there are some scenarios where if someone's just remodeling a bathroom or something like that, I tell them, I'll be the first one to tell them, you really don't need me. Yeah. A contractor can sketch this and do this. It's not a big deal. Right. But when you're moving walls, windows, put an addition on or something like that, you want to make sure that this complements the house. Right. That this looks like it's been there from the beginning, not something that was just slapped on. And I see so many projects that the addition's just slapped on. It's just like, oh, that's obvious. That's not supposed to be there. Or that's brand new. Right. And whenever you have a remodel or an addition, you want it to look like it was there intentionally from the beginning. Right. And so then you have some, and I'm not saying all, but there are some design firms out there who they're excellent contractors, but they don't, and through their experience of construction, they don't have the experience and education for design and know other things that we look at to make the project successful. And they just scratch some things together for an addition on a plan and make it work.
Right.
You know? And sometimes the clients don't realize that, okay, there's more you can do to it to make it even better.
Right.
But there are some design build firms out there that are, they're pretty good at it.
Yeah.
So
Design build firms are like very popular, getting hotter right now.
Yep.
It seems like they're trying to kind of bridge that gap between what you do and what like a general contractor does, and offer all those services kind of under one roof.
Yep.
I assume you probably compete with them quite a bit.
Occasionally, but
Yeah.
usually it's smaller projects.
Yeah.
They can bridge. They can handle some of the smaller things. Whether there's a very small addition, a sunroom or deck or something along that lines,
Right.
Or a kitchen remodel or something like that, where it just doesn't need walls moved, or even if it does, it's just a beam.
Right.
But when it comes to be a little bit more extensive, then they struggle a little bit more, I think.
Yeah.
Which is understandable. They don't have the design education and training that we have. And I've been doing this for 30 years now, designing stuff, so I know trial and error. And I know what works, what doesn't. I know how to make it look like it's supposed to be there. And so would you rather have some guy who swings a hammer designing your addition on your home, or would you rather have someone who's educated and has experience in doing this all the time to make sure that it goes
Right.
So
Have you ever thought about taking that jump and bridging that gap?
in regards to just
Offering builder services. So like as a designer, having a contractor group and like doing the jobs.
Yeah, so I have partnered with or collaborate with some contractors. I have a good relationship with one of the contractors now. I think he's one of the contractors that came in with you, Rick White.
Yep.
And he's a great guy, and we collaborate well together. And he kind of sells it as a design build service, and it's been a great relationship with him. But there is that a little bit of latitude with each other. Whereas it has its benefits in the fact that he lets me do the design work with the client, and then I talk to him about it after the fact. He gives me a little bit of space to be able to do the design work. And then as soon as I need questions or numbers or stuff like that with him, I pull him in immediately.
Right.
And we work well as a team, So there are ways, and there have been certain situations where I do collaborate with contractors and kind of bridge that gap a little bit.
Seems like the best thing for you and both for them.
Yeah, it can be. It can be. It's just sometimes, and it happened one time so far recently where the client hired us, and then when it came to actually getting the contractor started, they wanted to get another number and they decided to go with another contractor. And it's a little tough and a little awkward sometimes, but luckily, like I said, I have a good relationship with Rick, and that didn't create any issues.
Right.
And like I said, he's a good guy, and we work around that, and we're on to the next one.
Right.
Can't win them all.
Right.
And I'm the same way. I'm not going to be able to win every single project and get every one. So it's okay.
We wish
Move
we
on
could.
to the next one. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, you try your best.
Yeah.
And you try and educate people as best you can, and just establish as many relationships as you can. I meet new contractors all the time, and I love it.
Yeah.
I love meeting new people and new contractors, new engineers, new all that, and establishing relationships with them. When I talk to clients, I tell them I know probably 20 to 50 contractors from Boston to Maine,
Yep.
and I utilize a lot of them.
Right.
Because you have different size projects. You have different skill level. You have, you don't want a guy who builds $1 million homes building a sunroom on the back of the house.
Right.
Or maybe it's timeline or organization or personality. I had one client one time that she interviewed 6 contractors and hired one she thought was perfect. And then 2 months into a 9-month project, he had this annoying tick that drove her crazy, and she couldn't be in the room with him anymore. So I had to be there every 2 weeks for her. and meet with the contractor every week and meet with the contractor for the next 6 months.
Interesting.
And so it's just funny how some of these things and these connections and relationships work.
Yeah.
And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But it's the little things. And that's why I know so many good contractors out there.
Yeah.
And it's important for you to be able to have a competent and respectful and good contractor out there, because I can draw it up and make it look pretty, but they bring it to fruition.
Right.
They make it a reality.
Yeah.
You know, and if you have a good relationship with it, your vision
Right.
is going to come to life so much better and so much easier.
Right.
You know, so I really cherish and relish in the relationships that I build with some of the contractors out there.
Yeah. It's funny because like you say that, right? And that's kind of like one of the things that we see. I don't always have, we don't always know the contractor that's doing the kitchens, so it's like customer comes to us, we do the design work, we get it all put together, and then they have their own contractor that's coming in to do the work. And sometimes it's like, man, I could have got you somebody way better, you know? And it's like, sometimes I think like maybe the design build way is the way to go with some of this stuff and have a little bit more control over doing the entire kitchen, because it's like, I hate when we don't know the contractor, or don't have open lines of communication to the contractor, or haven't built that relationship yet, because it's like we can design a gorgeous kitchen based off of what we have, but man, if you don't put this thing together right and do what you're supposed to do, then you could completely ruin it.
And there are times when if I don't know the contractor that well, I'll set up a meeting with him before we get started and say, hey, I just need to get on the same page with you, get to know you a little bit, understand what you like, what you don't like, how you work, and all that, to make it a little bit easier and the transition to make it better.
We try to do the same thing, but sometimes with the contractors, they're just hard to nail down. That's the hard part.
No, they're always busy. They're always running around with their head cut off. And
15 jobs going.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
This is just another one. And,
and you have to remember that it's not that they don't want to or they don't like you.
They just can't.
But they're just very busy men or people.
Yep, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I just sometimes there's just certain jobs afterwards. I'm like, man, I just wish I had more control over that part of things.
Yeah.
So we've kicked around the idea a little bit, but
So and that's it's crazy because some of the times when change orders come around, it's never a fun topic to talk about.
Right.
But if you have a good relationship with the contractor, and I usually have majority of the time very good relationships with my clients. I'll get 10 to 15 texts in one day from one client asking me things. And the other day, one client texted me, says, "Should I do robin's egg or blue sky on the wall in this room?" And I'm like, I'm going to be honest, I'm not an interior designer, and they both kind of look the same to me. But I'm happy to try and give them my input, and I don't mind the texts, because I genuinely just enjoy helping people. I'll go out of my way to help people just to help them, so it doesn't bother me at all. I actually get satisfaction out of it. And sometimes I might not get a project, but I might steer them in the right direction of where they want to be or tell them what they need.
Right.
And as long as I'm helping them, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So, and I think that type of attitude and that type of mentality has helped me for clients and for business, because they see that.
Right.
They see I'm not in it just for the money. They're not just a number.
Yeah.
And it's some type of attribute that I think is very valuable when you run your own business.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to do business with somebody that loves what they're doing.
Right. True. That too.
I think that it just, it makes people a little bit more comfortable. It makes them trust you a little bit more. Like if you take pride in what you're doing.
Right.
I think that it makes the relationship better, makes it easier.
Yeah. And that's the first thing when you meet with a client. The first thing they're doing is they want to trust you.
Yep.
They want to believe in you. They want to know that you have their best thoughts in mind.
Yeah, for sure.
And that you're not just sitting there trying to collect a check.
Right.
And once you establish that relationship, you're good.
Yeah.
And you create. I have some clients that I did projects for 10 years ago, and I did 3 or 4 projects over those 10 years. And I see, when I first started with them, they just had their son or their daughter, and now they're in high school.
Yeah.
You know, and to see that whole family grow and to have that relationship. And even when I don't have a project with them, I'll send them an email, say, hey, how things going? You know, just checking in. Don't need anything. Just seeing how the family is, you know. And when you create those types of relationships and they know that, okay, this guy really doesn't care so much about the money. He just cares about caring.
Yeah.
You know, it sets a different attitude and a different type of thought process for you and the clients. For that
Sure.
matter. So, and I enjoy that. I love having clients from a long time ago that I still stay in touch with.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, me too.
and the same thing goes with contractors. I have contractors I've known for 30 years,
Yep.
you know, that I still work with and I enjoy working with. And I have contractors that I've just met that I have fun enjoying working with them as well.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah.
it's fun, and that's what I enjoy. I enjoy the relationships and the projects.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Where do you see as far as your business going? Like how big do you want to be? Do you want to have someone else doing design work? Do you want to have multiple designers? Do you have an employee count in mind or like a revenue in mind? Like, or are you kind of comfortable kind of being where you're at and making it more efficient?
I think, you know, so right now I have one project manager, and she's great. And she's been with me for about 5 years now, straight from Albania. I was the first person to work with her, and she's very intelligent and she's very good. And then I have an office manager, and I've been through a number of them, and some of them good, some of them okay.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we've all been there. But you know, I have an office manager now who's very intelligent, very on top of things, and she's good too. So it's nice to surround yourself with a good team.
Yeah.
You know, you can't be productive without a good team around you.
For sure.
But in regards to the future, I don't want to be a 30, 40 person design firm. You know, I enjoy having a small firm, and it just feels like it's more of a personal design firm.
Right.
You know, you're not just a number at a desk in a cubicle, you know. And I think it shows in some of the relationships we have with our clients. Like they feel like we cater to them very closely and they're not just another number.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the future, would I like to maybe bring on a couple more, you know? Yeah. You know, when the time comes and as I grow, hopefully a little bit more and more over the next number of years and watch the people that I have now become more, you know, further into development and doing more within the firm. That's where I would like to be. I don't need to have this huge design firm or you know, and I like staying majority in residential. You know, that's my true what I believe and what I know, you know, and but I like having the option of doing commercial to mix it up every now and then. And, you know, I have the knowledge. When I first started off, I first started designing modular homes. And I did that for a couple of years. And that kind of got too repetitive and boring. And then I worked for another firm, design build firm, actually. And we did strip malls, business buildings, churches, apartment complexes, Marriott and residence in hotels, and all those sorts of things. So I got a vast experience in the commercial world.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces in that, man.
Yes.
We just had a meeting with an architect firm down in Mass. What was the name of that? I forget the name of it, but seeing their office and like everything that they had going on, it was funny because it was like a old house that they had turned into like an office for their business. So there was people in the basement, there was people on the third floor, and all these little rooms that were just like separated off. It felt like there was probably 3 times more people than should be in there.
Yeah.
You know, it was just people everywhere. And then there was like rolls of fabric and like backsplash tile. And, and rolls of architectural plans everywhere.
Right.
And I was like, man, this is like mayhem.
Yeah.
You know, and just seeing the projects that they were working on, that we actually just quoted a big job for them in Rowley. That, you know, it's like a multi-use complex type of thing. There's kind of like an assisted living and like some other stuff, but there's like 5 buildings and, you know, so we designed some kitchens and stuff for them. But like just seeing their processes, I'm like, man, that's a lot to keep track of. Just sometimes going through architectural plans, I'm like, holy shit, there's so much information in this thing.
No, there is. And there's a lot of things to think about, you know, and what materials you use and how does it affect the project? How does it affect the actual situation right there? How is it applied? How does it interact? How is it going to look when it's done? Is it going to be continuous into the next room, or do you have something to define the end of it, or something to them? There's many different details and so forth that you just sometimes I feel like I can't draw enough details for some projects.
Yeah, there's all the codes and the regulations and shit too. So it's
and that's the other thing too. Sometimes contractors might not be aware of certain code requirements that are needed for certain situations, especially in commercial world. There's a lot more code and requirements for commercial than there are residential. It seems sometimes, and then contractor will say, "Hey, I want to do this, this, and this." I'm like, "Yeah, I would love to too, but this code says we have to do this, this, and this." And making sure that you keep everybody out of trouble as much as possible. It doesn't paint you in a corner and then you're stuck with a situation that you can't resolve.
Right.
And then that's why I always say I like to pretend or believe that I'm 3, 5, 10 steps ahead of the contractor to make sure that everything's going to be okay.
Right.
But so it's just trying to figure those things out and make sure keep everybody happy.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to be the mediator between the client and the contractor or so forth. And sometimes it can get very emotional, many times I've had certain scenarios where I've had clients crying, unfortunately, and not to anybody's direct fault. It's just certain things, how they fall out. And I've been sitting there handing tissues to some of my clients saying, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
We'll figure this out. Just take a breath, but you have to be there.
Yeah. Well, it's scary. I mean, I try to put myself in the shoes of the client as much as I can because, first of all, you're disrupting the house like crazy, especially for what we do kitchen.
Right.
So
most needed room in the house.
Right. And if you have 4 kids and you're tearing out the kitchen and they're going to be without a kitchen for 4 to 6 weeks, what's that look like?
Right.
A lot of paper plates and plastic forks, you know? So it's I try to put myself in their shoes as much as possible. There's a lot of stress factors in renovating houses, and the problem is that, they see the stuff on HGTV or all the done pictures on Instagram and they're like, oh, this is going to be beautiful. It's going to, and they're focused on that last picture.
Yep.
But they don't really understand the process and how disruptive it can be. And,
right.
And then, you're dealing with contractors too, and the blue collar guys are coming in and people, everyone's running around and trying to get stuff done. And there's schedules and there's money and there's the budget. And, I think that people get stressed out pretty quick, about that stuff.
It does. And it's sometimes, the clients don't realize some things, I'll say, okay, we have to redo your kitchen. Where are you going to move to? And they're like, what are you talking about? Well, we're going to have to redo your kitchen, your bathroom, and, your living room area. You're not going to be able to be in those spaces for about 3 to 4 months at least.
Right.
What do you want to do for them? Like, oh, I didn't even think about that, So, and then there's another whole topic we have to discuss and figure out how to work around.
Yeah.
It's, sometimes it can get a little crazy.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can have a freak out with some clients that freak out about certain situations. But, I think my job is the most money you'll ever spend in your life on one item is your house.
Yeah.
Whether it's a new home, addition, remodel, whatever it is. And it's stressful when you spend that much money on one thing. Right. It's probably one of the most stressful things you're going to have because you're worried about making sure that you get what you need for the money you're giving. And is it going to cost more for certain situations with change orders and all that?
Right.
It's normal to feel that way. So through design and planning ahead of time, I like to think that we try and take as much stress out of the project as possible to make it almost an enjoyable process, so that there's not much stress. They know exactly what's going to happen and how it's going to happen and the procedure and the timeline and what it should look like when it's done, and if a problem arises, we find solutions first and then talk to them about it. So again, de-escalates the situation.
Right.
And that's where I get a little bit of self-satisfaction out of everything, to knowing that, okay, they went through a very difficult situation stressful situation of doing addition or remodel or something to that effect. And I was able to help them get through it without going crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that you don't know, the unknown, is usually the most scary. So it's like for them, if they went straight to a contractor to do the build, I just feel like that's much more stressful because they get to figure the contractor, this is what they do all day long. This is what their business is. It's not their house, so for them, it's just like, well, I got a job to do. I have a budget to hit. I have timelines to hit.
I can't handhold you through the process.
Right. Trying to, and most contractors aren't the guys that are going to be the comforting cut type. You know what I mean? So I feel like for a business like yours, like to go through that process, talk about what's going to happen, alleviate some of the unknowns. I just feel like it sets things up much better for the end result.
Well, they now have something in front of me that lets them know what it's going to be like. There's no guesswork. And they can envision what it's going to be like, and they can be like, okay, I feel comfortable with this, and we have a plan in front of us, literally and figuratively. But we know what we're doing, rather than okay, let's just build it and we'll figure it out as we go.
Right.
So and then it's it's just that's, and the other thing that I always had when I started this is like, the reason why I like what I do is or I love what I do is the fact that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I can sit there with my daughter or my grandkids someday maybe and say, yeah, I designed that. I designed that building over there. I designed that building over there, because it's still standing, and it's a physical element that you can actually still appreciate and see, and that self-gratification right there, it feels like I'm leaving my mark, and I'm changing one structure at a time to make it better and to make it more appealing and to make people customize their house to what works for them, because there probably are not many people that live exactly the same way.
Right.
And that's the other thing that I like about my work too, is every single project is unique, whether it's the style, the look, the scope, the addition, the site, it's completely unique. I don't design many projects where it's the same exact building, plop, 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 plop on one site to another.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of that. When you go into a development and the only thing that changes is a gable entryway on the front of the house in a different color,
right?
It drives me crazy. I'm the house on the third green house on the right hand side. It's the only way you can tell the difference.
Right.
But I like having that unique style and look, and to make it different, to make them feel like they're individual.
Yeah, I feel like everyone in the trades, like if they've been doing it long enough, drive around with them, they can be like, oh, I put a water heater in that house, or like I ran the electrical in that house, or I did the kitchen in that house.
Yep.
It's funny that we kind of get to leave our mark on that stuff, Like for me, the kitchen's heart of the house, right?
Yep.
And like we do the same thing as far as what you're doing for designing the house. We're doing the same thing as far as the kitchen.
Right.
How do you use the kitchen?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Who cooks the most? Are you entertaining?
Yeah.
How much seating do you need on an island? Do you want legs on the island? Do you want overhangs?
Yeah.
Do you want your spice rack here? Do you want, all these different things?
Do you want a cooktop and a range and double ovens, or do you want a range or a prep sink or whatever? And that's the beauty of it, is that every project that you do is individualized and customized to your clients. It's not like it's just a standard kitchen you just plop in anywhere.
Right.
And I think that's where your expertise comes into play, and your design skills and your creativity. And that's why we love working with you, because you have those attributes. You can see it, and the amount of energy and care that you have towards your clients and your projects, it shows.
Right.
And those are the kind of people that you want to surround yourself with when you're working with subs. Or contractors or whoever it might be. You want to be able to have those people that are proud of what they do, that they care about the clients and their work.
Yeah.
And they have that pride, because if they don't, then it's not going to be the project you want it to be.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing that sucks. You can put as much work into it, as much heart as you want into it. But if the person that's doing the physical work doesn't have that same mindset, then could just go south quick.
Yeah. And I've had, unfortunately, I'm sure many of us can say that we've had those relationships from time to time.
Yeah.
And, you just accept it and move on.
Right.
But I'm very big on making sure that I surround myself with good contractors, good subcontractors, good companies out there that have the same mindset as I do.
Yeah.
And it creates a formidable team.
And I feel like I've seen a shift. Like it's more so now than it has been in a while. You know, I feel like there are a lot of contractors out there and a lot of builders and developers and who genuinely like what they do. You know, there'll always be the people that are out there for a check. You can't get around those people. But like, I just feel like there has been, and maybe it's just because of the people I surround myself with, or you know what we're doing here with the podcast. Like, I just feel like there seems to be a lot more pride taken in what we do and in our industry. A lot more so now than there has been in a while. And I'm not going to say ever, because like I feel like, you know, 20s craftsmen were probably the best, you know, and they really took pride in what they were doing. But then I feel like it just turned into a paycheck for a lot of people. And I just kind of feel like, you know,
There are plenty of those out there.
Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure.
But you know, it's I like to think that I have a very good judge of character.
Yeah.
When I first meet somebody, usually within the first 10 minutes, I get a general idea of who that person is and the values and the you know, type of person they are. You know, and I'm proud of what I can do. I can see that. You know, so I know if I have a good employee with me, or if it's not going to fit, or if a contractor, I can tell. You know, and I surround myself with those people, and the others, I'm just like, okay, you know what, you can do your thing, and good for you, but I'm gonna look on elsewhere. You know? So, but it's you're right though. Sometimes it's hard to find the right people out there, but it seems like more and more contractors now are becoming more personable, or caring a lot more about their profession and the projects they care about. Because honestly, if you don't, you're not going to be in the business for too long.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So.
Truth.
But, yeah. So, but yeah, I just, you know, it's nice to be able to establish those contractor relationships.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so. It's tough weeding them out, but it's nice when you know, the circle kind of solidifies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. So.
All right. Well, let's get into toolbox tips, man.
Okay.
So, as far as what you do, so I guess I want to kind of touch on a couple of things, right? Because you have a lot of experience in the industry. I would love to know what you think as far as, you know, good practical advice that you would give to contractors who are either in the business now or thinking about getting into the business. You know, we're talking about tool belt on, building houses, doing the renovations, doing the remodels and the additions. Yep. What kind of advice would you give those guys starting out?
That's a good question. I mean, a lot of them, I guess, you know, establishing relationships is important with your subcontractors, with other engineers, with other architects and designers out there, and finding ones that are accommodating or fit your personality. You know, and then be willing and open to difference of opinion. You know, value someone else's thoughts on their solutions, or, you know, and not have an ego.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, back to my statement earlier, is that the most stressful time for a client who's doing a project is spending money. And you have to really treat it as if it was your own project, and it was your own money that you're spending, and not just feel like, okay, well, we'll just make this change order and it'll be another $6,000. Well, to you, it's just another $6,000 because it's not coming out of your pocket.
Right.
To them, $6,000 could be like, wow, this hurts.
Right.
You know, and it can affect them emotionally big time, you know? So just take that into consideration. And, you know, there have been times, I'm not saying all the time, but, you know, occasionally you might take a small hit, you know, just to make sure the client is okay. You know, maybe it's a $500 hit here or $1,000. In the grand scheme of things, of a $200,000 project, $1,000 hit might not be an issue.
Right.
You know, it might hurt, it might not kill you.
Right.
To be able to do that. But just to make, I take hits sometimes, occasionally myself. You know, it's like, okay, you know what? We're not going to charge you to do that revision on there because, you know, you've been through a lot and you spent a good amount of money already on this, and, you know, it's not a big deal. I'm not going to create a ripple in our relationship just because I need an extra dollar.
Right.
You know, I don't nickel and dime my clients. I don't believe in it, you know. So it's the same thing for contractors. I mean, I feel as though they're kind of in the same boat as we are, just a different type of work. They're dealing firsthand with the client. They're dealing with emotional swings with clients. They see them all the time, and it's the most important person in your business is your client,
right?
Because they're the ones that are giving you the money,
right.
So
and the referrals.
Right, exactly. And that's just it. I tell my clients all the time, I'm not going to sit here and try and charge you ridiculous amounts of money. I'm just going to charge you a reasonable fee because, and if I do a good job, I'm not going to pay off my mortgage with your project.
Right.
I'm going to pay off my mortgage if I do a good job on your project, and then you refer me to people in the future.
Right.
And that's how I build my business. I don't try and nickel and dime to get the most money out of one project so I can pay off bills.
Yeah.
I look for the long-term plan.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing I kind of feel with contractors. I think it's almost the same with any type of profession in our field.
Yeah.
You want to cater to the client. You want to do everything you can to help them within reason.
Yep.
But you want to establish that relationship with them. It's huge.
Yeah.
And that will build your business 10 times faster than just trying to get as much money as you can off of any projects.
Yeah, and I feel like even if it's like the small stuff, man, like some people just, it's not even so much the monetary value of it, but just like the gesture of it. Mm-hmm. Like we did a big project out in New Hampshire, kitchen, bunch of bathrooms, whole bunch of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And they had something else built just not too long ago, and it's near the kitchen or around the kitchen, and they just needed a couple of handles, right? And it's like the designer was like, "Hey, I got to order a couple new handles for this," and it's like, "Well, just give it to them,
right?"
Like, what costs us $50?
But it goes a long way to the owner,
right? But it's like we had no part in it. It's not our project. We didn't do the whatever got built, like, but like $50 just to like send, "Hey, thank you."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And again, we didn't make a ton of money on the project, but like
it's just
still
a gesture.
It's a gesture,
Yeah.
right? And an interior designer brought us in, so like makes the interior designer look good. Like, and again, it's not a lot of money, and again, these people have money.
Yeah,
it's not a lot of money, but it's just a gesture.
Yeah,
100%. It's like, hey,
but you're building a trust and a relationship with them, and when they sit there and they say, "Oh my God, he just did that for just to be kind and appreciative and so forth," they look at you 10 times more than if you don't.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing how just like doing something small like that makes you stand out.
100%.
Yes.
I agree.
It's crazy.
Yep.
All right. So, and then I guess, same thing, man. If you had some, 20 year ago, what would you do different? What kind of practical advice would you give somebody that wanted to get into the design world?
For my type of work, I think it's critical and crucial for someone to work in the field with a contractor.
That.
They need to. I can study in a book for hours and hours and hours of details and way things are put together in a book, but you never really get a full understanding of how things are put together and what you have to do labor-wise to make those details work, unless you're in the field.
Yeah.
And when you do that, when you're in the field and you're working, if you're planning to be an architect or designer, I strongly encourage you to do maybe a year working for a contractor.
Yeah.
And get out there and see what it's like in their shoes, in their viewpoint, and how they have to put things together and how they have to, the labor intensive, how labor
hard
intensive
it
it
is.
is. Yes. Right? Because if you don't understand that, your details, again, will look beautiful, but they're not, and the contractor's going to come back to you and say, "Yeah, this is really pretty, but it's not going to work."
Yeah.
And that was the most valuable lesson for me. And that's where I do feel like I have a leg up on a lot of other people who just have studied from books.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing that I could highly recommend.
Should be fucking mandatory.
It should.
You know what I mean? Like if you look at plumbers, electricians, like they got to be out there for 4 years.
Right.
Like working in the field before they can get a license.
And architects can just go, get their degree.
Right.
And then, yes, and then you work for a design firm for a while, but again, you're just drawing in the office.
Right.
And then you can take your test and get your license.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe that it should be a criteria. In order to get your license, you need to be in the field for 6 months, a year, whatever.
Something.
Just to get some background on what life is like on the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
So that you can relate and you can have that more of a closer relationship and understanding with the contractor and know where he's coming from.
Yep.
And I have a lot of contractors that, if an issue comes, I can, instead of having to go into the site and look at it and deal with it. They can call me and I can listen to their lingo and follow them step by step real easily because I know what they're talking about.
Right.
And it just makes it easier. And the relationships I have with contractors, I can relate to them a lot easier.
Yeah.
So it makes the relationship stronger too.
Yeah, I know for us, like I bring the designers out to installs. We were actually just at one this morning. Just to touch base with the installer. It's usually late on the first day that they're installing or first thing on the second day.
Yep.
Once boxes are open, stuff's starting to get put in and put together, that type of stuff.
Yep.
Just to go over what he's seeing.
Yeah.
Like this morning we had, it's kind of a two-level crown molding, right?
Yep.
So we have our refrigerator surround, cabinet above, 2 panels on the side, crown molding to the ceiling. And then the perimeter of the kitchen is sitting about 2 inches short of the ceiling for a shadow line. They're going to do lighting back there.
Scout, yep.
So, but they're also demoing floors. We measured before floors were demoed. So we did kind of know that and put that little variable in, but still we were like a little bit short.
Yeah.
So it's good. I think, again, you look at it on paper, right? Design wise, it works.
Yeah.
But then in the field, it's like, oh, well, it doesn't work because of this.
Yeah.
I think it's good for the designers to go out and see that and troubleshoot it.
It's funny you should mention that because that's something that I try and do in my firm all the time is get my staff, even my office manager, out to the sites as much as possible. So like I mentioned, I have a project manager who just came over from Albania. She's been with me for 5 years and she's fantastic.
I met her, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, Nelda. And
Nelda, right.
So when she came over, she came from a country that uses stone, concrete, and the metric system.
Right.
And, her English wasn't great. It was okay, but it wasn't great. And now, 5 years later, she knows all the wood dimensions, nominal wood dimensions out there. She knows all the details in wood framing. She knows her English has improved 10 times. And I feel confident in that I can just, if I needed to, I can send her out to a site and she can handle the situation, no problem. And the reason why I believe is because in the beginning, I took her out to a lot of sites and walked her through and explained to her, okay, this is what, because when you see it visually in real life, you can understand it 10 times better than you can in a 2D drawing.
Yep.
Right. So when you go out there and you see it constantly all the time in front of you, then you know how to put things together and you know what works and what doesn't work and the issues that come up with contractors and projects and so forth like that. And you feel the more you get out there, the more comfortable you feel and confident you feel being able to handle that situation.
Right.
So that would be probably the second next on my list of suggestions for people out there is get out to sites as much as possible.
Get in the field.
Especially if you're new in the profession and you're trying to learn and you want to be knowledgeable and, on top of things, get out to the sites.
Yeah.
Go talk to contractors. Find out what their issues come up with all the time.
Yeah.
I talk to contractors all the time and I say, listen, I know I do a reasonably good, I believe I do a very good job of what I do for designs and plans. And I tell them, look at my plans and give me feedback.
Yeah.
I don't have an ego. It's not going to hurt me or upset me if you tell me something that you don't like or things that what didn't work for you? What do you think I could do to make these better?
Yeah.
I'm constantly asking that because I'm not one that settles to stay at the same level. I have that personality where I'm always trying to reach the next step.
Yeah.
Whether it's my business, my life, my family, anything like that, I'm always pushing for the next step.
Yep.
And I want to do that for my service that I provide. I want to make it better. I want to make it the best that's out there.
Yeah.
As far as I can.
Yep.
And so you need to have that, and keep trying to improve and trying to make it better and learning from your mistakes because God knows I've made plenty in my past, but I've learned from each one. Yep. And, so you learn from each one, make it better. I do the same thing with my team. Okay, you made a mistake on this, no big deal. I don't want to make a big deal of it, and I'm not pointing fingers. I don't like to point fingers, but let's learn from it. What do we learn from this, and how can we make it better next time?
Yeah.
And I think that approach really keeps you catapulting, moving up, rather than just staying on a flat line with your business.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually had that conversation this morning. I've been doing it forever, and my lead designer is best designer I've ever met. Like she's one of the best kitchen designers I've ever worked with.
Yep.
And we had the same conversation this morning. With our installer. So we brought in Tim Davis as our installer. Great installer, great interior carpenter. We were talking about that stuff this morning. Walls were out of square, like nothing's level, that type of thing. And he was asking about extending the backs on the cabinets, right? Because the way it's set up is this one cabinet can't be flush against the wall, because if it is, then the whole kitchen's out of square, and you have the dishwasher right there. So if that cabinet's not squared up with the cabinet on the other side of the dishwasher's in there kind of weird.
Right.
So we're talking
it
about
might not work efficiently or correctly.
Right. So we're talking about extending the backs on the cabinets in certain circumstances, which we can do in Omega.
Yeah.
And it's something that me and Dee are aware of, but never really consider it with certain projects.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. And talk to Tim, like, what are you seeing? What could be better?
Yeah.
And we talked about that, and he's like, if you just made these backs an inch longer and I could scribe them to the wall, like, it'd be so much easier.
Problem solved.
Right.
And huge thing to add to your your designs.
Right. Yeah. Now you got, me who's been doing it 25 years. You got Dee who's been doing it for a while. Learned something this morning just from, again, looking for the feedback.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to hurt our feelings.
No.
We just want to make things easier.
I don't get upset about anything. If it compliments me or doesn't, or says, hey, there's an issue here.
Right.
Great. Tell me. I want to know so I can fix it and don't do it again. I've been doing this for 30 years. I still learn new things every day.
Right. I say the same thing all the time.
And I like finding new things to learn every single day. I'm a problem solver. I love doing it. So give me another problem to solve. So it's all good.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for coming in. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. I think this was great. I think it's going to be really helpful. I think there's a lot of good information here, man.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate you coming in and kind of sharing your story, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure being here, and it's great.